Hey Cookie Monsters! This is so off the top of my head. So many thoughts. I'm hoping I can get this whole thing under control and not too long, but when has that ever been a thing? I might start crying. I have been crying, so chances are high. Okay, let's talk about this. So this is my video spoiling and talking all about the All for the Game trilogy by Nora Sakavic. I think that's how you say it. I'm talking about all three books, Foxhole Court, The Raven King, The King's Men. And I read them in, I want to say like 2 weeks, but like there were a bunch of days, probably like half of those days I wasn't reading them. So technically I probably read them in about 7-ish days, which is a lot for me to read a trilogy. I like the numbering system for the pages is like weird because I read them all on ebook. I finished the last one 2 days ago and I just have a lot of thoughts. I have been crying a lot. I don't know where to start, but I want to just say, number one, I loved it. Number two, so not my type of book. Like I took this on faith. I got a recommendation from Michaela. So, or like I've just been loving this, just go on faith and like dive into a book you know nothing about just because a friend that you trust their book reading recommendations told you about it. Michaela, girl, I owe you big time. You have ruined my life and I am thankful for it. So yeah, I absolutely loved it. I don't normally read sports books. It just, in so many ways, like if you stop and look at it and try to say like, what is so good about this book? You're just like, it's hard to say, but it's amazing. That's just like, that's how I felt. Because the pages were weird, like they just kind of show you the locations on ebook. And it was also on a phone, so I think it makes also a difference with the way they like lay it out. But like there are 6,500 in The King's Men and I read it in 2 days? Yes, 2 days. I didn't sleep one night. I stayed up all night and I slept for like 2 hours in the morning and then went back to reading. It wasn't okay. I'm not okay. No one's okay. It's not happening. I want to start with the things I disliked about the books, even though that sounds really weird. Like, why would you want to do that? But there was just so few. So I thought it's just like criticisms, but not necessarily like bashing the book, and I think they're really valid, but then I can get on to like the million other thoughts I have in the other things. This is an actual criticism because it's stupid. Maybe it's different in the physical books, I don't know. I'm debating whether or not to buy them because I'm cheap. I love that you can like for $2 have the entire trilogy. The first one's free and the next two are 99 cents, but it's stupid that XC isn't explained until the end of The Raven King. Now, if you perhaps knew to check to the end of The Raven King, like then it wouldn't be so bad, but even then, like I'd be scared that somehow I'd like on my way to the end get spoiled. I think if they can like revamp the book, if there's a way to change that, I would just take the XC rules and regulations, just dump it in the front. Like before you open up in the first book, have that. It's 10 pages maybe an ebook, which must be like 4 pages maybe on like a regular paper book. So I just feel like it's so stupid because XC is so simple. Like halfway through the first book, I told Michaela, like, you know, I was telling her how I was feeling and how I was living the book and everything. And I was like, I'm not really sure how XC works. And she's like, oh my gosh, let me just send it to you. So she like sent me all the like screenshots of the rules and then like I read it and boom, like that's it. I knew it. I understood it. It's not a complicated game. This was pretty early on in the book because I'd not even played one game yet. This was like the first game of the season. I already had read the rules and it made such a difference to like have read the rules because there's 4 positions and I mean you're just getting, I like to say team sports are about getting the thing in the thing, putting, you know, so I mean, you're getting the ball to the goal. It's not so hard. Like just explain it so we know what's happening. That's like my one criticism. My second one is less of a criticism because I think it's part of like the style of the book and I can't really criticize that, but I just found the whole book so confusing. Like even though I loved it, like I swear half the time I did not know what was going on. And I mean less in the like I didn't know all of like let's say Neil's past. Like I don't need to know that. That's kind of like I get that the book is trying to like slowly let you learn more as you go on, and like the same with all the other characters, slowly learning them. But I just felt like most of the characters had really cryptic and like almost like they were like in code, their conversations. Like I didn't know what they were saying. I can't even think of how many times. I'm like an obsessive highlighter at this point, just like because I've slowly become more and more of an avid ebook reader, and now it's just like it's obnoxious. Like you guys want to see like look how many times I highlight things. It's not okay. Anyway, so I have so many highlights where it's just like someone says something and I highlight their like quotes and I'm just like question mark, like what does it mean? That's just like what I felt about a lot of what they were saying. And the reason I say it's not really a criticism is because number one, it's just writing style. Like that's her writing style and that's cool. But I think also a lot of it has to do with the specific characters she's talking about. So people like Neil and Andrew and maybe even like Kevin and Aaron, like people who are very guarded about their emotions and their feelings and like who they'll let in. They won't outright say a lot of the things they mean, and so that's why they speak in that way. So it's more of like I just find it really confusing to follow. This is something I probably bring up later also, but like I just, the way I read, I personally, like it's hard for me to handle that. It's hard for me to enjoy a book if I don't have like a good foundation about what's happening. I've mentioned in my Song of Ice and Fire reviews, like I like that there's an appendix there. Even though there's 8 million characters, I'm cool with it because there's an appendix and there's a map and I can flip to them anytime I want to like put myself in a spot where I like know where everything is and who's going where and how they're all related. And I feel like in this book, it was just really hard to follow. Like I'm not rereading it, but I was just kind of like trying to find a certain point right at the beginning of the book, and then I like found myself an hour later, like 2 chapters in for the first book, like again, like I'm just rereading it. It's only been a week and it's time to reread. And honestly, on the second read, like everything falls into place. It just made me like, I don't know what it was, but like I didn't understand any of the relationship with like, who were the Moriyamas? Why was Kevin there and now the twins? And like, I just didn't understand any of it. And like on the reread, like all of it kind of made more sense. Yeah, I just think it's a little bit confusing. An actual criticism in terms of how it's confusing is like, I think sometimes she doesn't introduce characters that she should. So like if someone's like a minor character, such as like a player from another team, she'll just say their name as if we've met them before, but we haven't. It'll be like, oh, and so then Joe and Mike came to pull the fight apart. I'm like, poor Joe and Mike. And like you kind of like infer, oh, like they're the strikers on this team, and you're like, okay, whatever. But like no one ever introduced that. And I noticed that sometimes also with like locations around Palmetto State University, like sometimes they mention like once like the construction site on the other side where they were building like maybe new dorms or something. And I was like, you never mentioned this. Like, how are we supposed to know the layout of this school when it's never been mentioned? But like, okay. So those are my criticisms on the book. Neil Johnson, my adoptive son, who I love with all my heart and soul. I want to say I have a lot of feelings about this book, and like they keep changing. I didn't mean to read all the asks on Nora's Tumblr before I filmed this, but then I didn't because I was like, you know what, you don't have time to go through all the asks, and it's more important to film this first because like I don't want to like forget my thoughts. So I've read some. I have read the original like what happens after the King's Men blog post. Love that. This book, like I just, okay, so I was obsessed with Neil and I did not like Andrew for most of the series, like probably close, it sounds so bad, but I only started to somewhat sympathize with him when the terrible, terrible, horrible scene happened at Nikki's parents' house. So, and I like, even now I have so many conflicting feelings about Andrew. So I like don't even know how to get into this. I'm gonna do this in a really roundabout way where I'm gonna start off talking about Neil's sexuality, and that will hopefully lead me into all the other thoughts I have on the two of them and also like the rest of the team and everyone else who matters. So why am I mentioning his sexuality? Number one, I had seen, I think on like one list or a couple lists, or like people mentioning on Twitter that Neil is asexual. And I haven't really read many books with asexual protagonists, so I kind of had that like in the corner of my mind, like, oh, he might be asexual and this could be a really interesting read and all that, but like that wasn't really the reason I read it. I read it because Michaela said it's a really good book and like I trust it. Really early on, right, Neil says something like, I don't swing, and I'm like, ooh, so like this is a point for the, yes, he is asexual side of things. And then I did a dumb thing where I googled the words the Foxhole Court asexual, and I came across, I think it was 2 blogs who were like reviewing it, and one of them said he acts asexual for most of the books, but he ends up with a man. And then the other one said, I hear he ends up with a guy, I hope it's Andrew. Now, keep in mind, this is like at the point where he says I don't swing in the Foxhole Court. So like, I don't have a favorable opinion of Andrew at this point. And I'm like, the heck? Like, why would you ever want, no. So now I'm like annoyed because number one, I didn't know he was gonna end up with a guy, and I kind of wanted, if he had a sexual preference, to kind of be like a surprise. But I also am annoyed because now I have this like in the corner of my mind, like, oh, he's gonna end up with Andrew. Like I don't think it was a spoiler because I think the person was writing it as like they were hoping for it. And I personally was rooting for him to be, wait for it, with Kevin, which now that I think about it, I'm like, oh, that would be horrible. It would be so bad. Like they're both too obsessed with Exie and they're too intense. And like, but I kind of thought it was good because at that time, like they really hated each other, and I thought like there'd be like this big like falling out kind of thing when Kevin realized who he is, but then like at some point it would mend into love or something. I don't know. It's not a terrible idea, honestly. Like in my head now even, I'm like, yeah, I could convince myself that that would work. But I was not on board with the idea of Andrew. And you know what? Like as it went on, I wasn't really warming up to him more than that. Like, so the thing is, like, it took a really long time for me to get like okay with the idea of Andrew. It took a really long time, and even then, like, I think most of me coming around to him happened like post-read thinking about it, or like right now rereading it and like, oh, okay. But it's not like I didn't like it when I was reading it, it's just that it was definitely not something I was rooting for before it happened. But on the topic of him being asexual, I do think the word demisexual, which is also a word I've seen like attached to Neil, is probably even more accurate, which I believe people consider a subtype of asexual. I don't know if people consider it like completely separate, but that's how I've seen it used. And that makes a lot more sense because he does mention, like, I'm not exactly sure how he said it, but something along the lines of like, I only like you. Because there's that thing where every time they like kiss, there's like some sort of argument that they're having. And he basically, like, I think Andrew says something like, there wouldn't be any point because you don't swing. And he's like, yeah, no, I'm only interested in kissing you. Like, I'm not interested in anybody else. So it sounds a lot like that's what demisexual is, where it's not like I have a preference for what like gender I'm into. It's more like I don't really think about it, but then like, yeah, I guess somebody could come along and suddenly I'm like, that person. Like, especially it's like more like also like it takes a long time of like getting to know each other and before it's like a thing, a possibility. But so concerning the two of them, that's just what I wanted to lay the groundwork with, that I wasn't really on board with Andrew. As for Neil himself, freaking love him. And it's interesting, one of the asks, that's why I feel like I should have read all the asks, but maybe I'll just do another video, I don't know. One of the asks was like, how does the team view Neil? Do they view him like Andrew? And I was like, no! Because everyone views Andrew as like a monster. And I was like, I hope they don't view Neil as a monster. And she kind of just said something like they view him as like a stray tomcat. Like, he's kind of creepy and dangerous, but at the same time, like, they all take pity on him, but like he sticks to the sidelines, but like he's also like kind of hanging around. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that sounds like Neil. I still remember thinking this, like, because it was a week ago when I was reading just the first book, so I still didn't know anything was gonna happen later, and I was just like, I freaking love how like strong he is. And I know it's like sad because he's had to build this strength. It's not like necessarily a choice. Like, you know, he needed it to survive, but like I love that, like, no matter what he's been through and no matter what life throws at him, like even as a fox, like things are hard for him a lot, like in the beginning a lot. And because you're in his head, basically you get to know like his inner thoughts, and that he's got like all this fear that's like always threatening to drag him down, and like he's able to just like focus and be strong and like push himself and apply himself to Xe. And I love that so much about him. Like these are the kind of characters I love, characters that like no matter what life throws at them, they're strong and able to like push through it. And I know the like running joke is like, I'm fine, he was not fine, but I love that. I'm also my heart is like crying for him and like, please just get help, your teammates like you. But I also really like that he's willing to put the effort in. Like, he gets up early to run, he will work late at night with Kevin, he'll do anything for this thing that he loves. I'm gonna keep saying this, but like it's sad to me that like a lot of these characters' personalities and motivations are born out of their circumstances, but like isn't that how everyone is? So like what I'm thinking of is like the reason he loves Xe so much is because his life sucked and he had nothing else, and like especially after his mom died he really had nothing else. So it's like, can you even say it's like him that loved Xe, or it's like a product of his life? But at that point it's almost like the reason I like certain things is also because of the life I've led. Yeah, I do really admire him for that, and I admire him for, this is gonna sound really dumb, but like I never work out. It's really bad, and I've been saying for years like, go work out. So like I felt like such a piece of crap reading this book, that like these kids, I mean, like I know most people don't work out as much as like professional athletes on NCAA teams, but I literally felt like such crap. I was like, oh my god, like like his workout run in the morning that's like a joke to him is like more than I've worked out in the last like year probably. It's so sad. And then he does like what, 5 hours in the gym and then like 2 in the middle of the night, and I'm like, oh. Anyway, so Andrew, a lot of thoughts about Andrew. I thought he was like an asshole the whole beginning. And also, maybe this is an ask, should I look it up? Maybe it is an ask that I should look at. I never really feel like we got an answer for why he was on his medication. I've just kind of assumed it's because he had anger issues. Meaning like, it's not uncommon, I think, to be put on psychosis medication for anger issues, because I just spent most of the books being very confused as to like, if he's psychotic or whatever the word is, and they put him on this medication and the medication makes him manic and like uncontrollable and unpredictable, how is this better? Like, I just never understood it. And everyone wanted him to get off the medication, and so I just didn't really understand it. It seemed like even on his medication he could get angry enough to do something really, really rash, but maybe not. Maybe it's just there to like mush up his, you know what I'm saying, like make his mind fuzzy, and like I guess that's, I don't know. Maybe I should go look that up. Andrew's medication. There is a question. I'm gonna look this up just in case I'm like stupid and not reading it. Oh my god, this is so long. Okay, so then the answer. His medication isn't based on anything real. Okay, so that's a thing. She goes, I'm pretty sure Andrew's entire scenario is the most unrealistic thing in the series, which says a lot considering the books are basically a series of far-fetched, traumatizing events. His situation is what I was most leery of when I decided to self-pub the books. I knew it was a touchy subject and it would take a major leap of faith for someone to just go along with it. They were intended to be antidepressants. Way to kill me, Nora! As an aside, she puts on the bottom, Andrew told Neil the truth about the rooftop. He was up there so he could feel something. He'd wrecked his system the last several years between his medication, the alcohol, and the cracker dust. Drake wasn't the impact it should have been, and the sedatives Proust had him on for Proust's safety marred those encounters too, but this was something real, the way his stomach tightened when he stepped out onto the rooftop and his heart tripped when he got too close to the edge. Proof of life, as it were. Oh, Andrew. So I guess that's our answer is, yeah, it's not really based on anything real, but I just thought the whole medication thing was like so complicated. I didn't understand any of it. Let me say this. I have things I like about Andrew Minyard, is that how you pronounce it? And I have things I dislike about him. Up until finding out his backstory, like, I mean, we find it piece by piece, especially like he killed his mom, but she was abusing his brother. Doesn't quite excuse it, but makes you like think of him as less of a monster, I guess. I don't know. Like there's those things, but then we find out like the big thing with Drake. That changes a lot because it explains why he doesn't have normal human reactions to things. What do you want from him? He's gone through a lot. Like I can't expect him to react to things normally. However, I'm gonna start with the things I can't stand about him. Like he is a jerk. And he acts like a jerk, but there are certain things that were like lines for me. There's a lot of lines. The first line for me, when Andrew orchestrated the trip to Colombia, the first one where they drug Neil. For some kid who's really big into consent, that's kind of messed up that he forced him onto this cracker dust and like all this other stuff. It's just so messed up to me. And like also like I still don't really understand how he did that thing with Matt. Like he put him on crazy hardcore drugs to somehow cure his drug addiction. I'm not really what? I know it's a screwed up sense of like all he has in life is his promises. That's like all he has. He doesn't care about Exy and he doesn't have family. He has his promise to Aaron, he has his promise to Kevin, and later he has his promise to Neil. So I understand that he's like a lot bit too obsessive about those, and so that's why he does these trips where he like tries to make sure someone's not a threat, but it's not okay. It's so not okay that it like gets me, like that's the first straw that made me like really not like Andrew. And the second one is almost worse, and it's that scene with Caitlin. So they have that whole messed up thing where like we later find out that like Aaron holds Neil against Andrew in order to get Caitlin. And I mean, I like the whole thing with that, but the scene where Andrew's basically saying, Caitlin, like, you can be with Aaron. From what I can understand, Caitlin is a nice, sweet cheerleader girl, just, you know, at college like a normal girl. And she just likes this guy. And she's really sweet and devoted from what I can understand. Like, she knows that Aaron has a lot of issues and she's willing to be with him. And she's even willing to hang out with his team even though they all have a lot of issues. And like, they're more than a lot of people would be able to put up with. And she's so chill with it. And what does Andrew do? Because he has a stupid promise thing in his head and he's so mad about it, he like throws her against the wall. He finds her in the library, drags her, throws her against the wall, and basically says something along the lines of, don't talk to me, don't look at me, don't contact me, and if you ever do any of those things, I'm gonna literally murder you. I'm sorry, that's not okay. It's so not okay that I'm so mad about it on Caitlin's behalf, because like her life was just threatened because she wants to date someone's brother. Like, what the hell? And then she still dates him. So like, she's an angel in my eyes. I just think it's so messed up that he did that. Like, he's not stupid. He's not stupid. He knows that's not okay. He knows that's crazy. You know what? I'm also shaking my fingers at Neil because he just stood there while that happened. Like, no big deal. Because the thing is, she started crying and she said, please. And then I guess Neil was kind of more like wrapped up in the response that Andrew had from the word please. And then we have that conversation like right outside the library. And like, it's almost enough to make you like forget what just happened, but it isn't actually enough. Those things and certain other things that Andrew does, for me, like, I've made the decision that I love Andrew, but it's hard for me to like him. And then on the flip side of this, I'm like, my heart is like pounding and aching and like crying for him and looking at me almost like, what a jerk you are. Look at you sitting here judging this poor kid who has gone through hell a million times over because you don't think he's nice enough for like trying to go through life and cope with his past. But it's hard not to. Like, I know that his reactions to things and like the ways he acts are a product of what's happened to him, but it's just hard. It's hard for me to like his personality. I like the things that we get to see, the times he lets Neil in, but we don't see it very much. I would die for more scenes of just the two of them like learning to let each other in, because I feel like we do really know Neil pretty well, but that's because we're in his head. But Andrew, like, not at all. And that's actually another thing, like the POV is a huge thing for me is like, I probably wouldn't think of Neil as positively as I do if the like roles were reversed or whatever, or if it was just all third person and you never got any perspective in on Neil's head. But since like every time Neil acts like a weirdo from the other people's perspectives, we're in his head understanding what sort of memories his current situation might be bringing up, or like what he's thinking of. So you like get it and you're like totally on his side. But when it comes to Andrew, it's completely different. I would love for like a POV Andrew chapter. Like that would be amazing. Like at the same level that we get Neil. Like we never get Neil saying like, I did this, I did that, but it's just like, it's letting you into his head. I would love that for Andrew, because I think then you would understand more of it. And like in the books, a lot of it is coupled with their like cryptic conversations. So like in order to understand it, like I would spend a lot of time like staring at these lines, and finally I'd be like, oh, I think I know what's going on. But it would take a lot for me to like understand why he's doing this. Like I just reread the part right outside the library, the whole please conversation. Oh my god, it killed me. Like it made me so upset, like that he said like, why do you hate the word please? Who said it? I said it. You know, he said he'd stop if I said please. You believed me, I was 7. And that's like when Neil suddenly understands that like Drake's not even the half of it. He lived this his whole life, which is, I'm trying not to get to like the details of this because I know I'm gonna start crying. But then right after that, Neil's like, I don't get it. How can this be okay? Like after what people have done to you, like how are you okay with us? And he was like, first of all, he's like, there's no us. And then he like tries to walk away, and then Neil's like, no, wait, stop. And he holds out his hand. He's about to touch Andrew. Andrew turns around, like clearly he's I think he either says stop or he like makes some sort of motion like don't touch me type. And he stops and he stands like that for a minute. And then Andrew goes, that's why. I'm trying to find the exact line. Finally, Andrew looked at him, but for a moment, Neil didn't know who he was looking at. In the space of one breath, Andrew's expression went so dark and distant, Neil almost retreated. Then Andrew was back as calm and uncaring as always, and he caught Neil's wrist to push his hand to the side. He dug his fingers in before letting go, not quite hard enough to hurt, and said, that's why. Neil stopped when Andrew told him to. It wasn't much, but it was more than enough. Neil managed to nod, too numb to speak, and watched Andrew walk away from him. That is so sad to me. Like, he's willing to be in a relationship with a guy. His minimum standard is that when he tells a person to stop, the person stops. It speaks volumes. It's like so upsetting to me that like this is who he is. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that like it's hard for me to make up my mind about him, because like I love him, I support him, and I want the best for Andrew, but his actions like in a conversation to conversation basis generally make me not like him. But then like I read things like that and I just like understand that like he's just trying to cope. All I want is for the two of them to like help each other out and like get to a okay as they can be kind of point. I've been thinking a lot about like mental health and just like dealing with traumatic things like sexual abuse and physical abuse and abandonment and things like that. This is a big thing I wanted to say, is that this book is very realistic. I read a lot of books where people have problems, and not every book is like that, but a lot of books is like this person has a problem, and it might be a big problem, it might be a small problem, it's like an interpersonal relationship problem, it might be like they're sick or whatever, and then they meet like a significant other, or they like go on a road trip, or they have a revelation or something, and like very neatly tied up at the end of the book, it's over. This book is not like that. This book, it's like they have problems, and the problems are far-reaching, and they reach into every aspect of their lives. And like when they first said like, hey Neil, you could be the like glue that ties our groups together and brings the team together, and I was like, oh yeah, it's gonna be great. She's just gonna do it. He's like, hey guys, can we all be friends? And everyone's gonna be like, yeah, cool, we're all friends. Obviously it didn't work like that, because this book is so realistic. Like when people have these problems, like Andrew and Neil, who have like deep set traumatic past, it's just not gonna be solved 1, 2, 3. I wouldn't say solved, because like how do you solve it? Go back and erase the past. But I mean working through it to a point where they can live as healthfully as they can. This book, I think, really paints that struggle like in a very realistic way. Like I know people say this book is not realistic, but like it's realistic in the ways that count. Like that's the realism. Yeah, it's not realistic because like the loser team became the best team, and like the sport apparently isn't super realistic. Whatever, I don't even care. That's not what I'm here for. I'm here for the realism of understanding that like these types of issues are not solved in no time. Like it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of efforts, and there's so many setbacks in this book. Like every time you think things are gonna come back together, like there is that one point in time where like the teams are hanging out with the vixens and like and everyone's chill, like the two parties, like the upperclassmen and the cousins, and like, but that's when Andrew's gone, and then Andrew comes back, and then you think it's gonna be okay with Andrew back, and then Andrew and Aaron get into a fight, and everyone's getting into fights, and then they go to therapy, but then it's still not good, and then like he gets kidnapped, and like it's just never perfect. And it's like that's what just like it gets me so sad, because the main characters right now and Andrew, their issues aren't resolved by the end of the book, and who knows if they ever will be. And it's like you just want to help them, but like what are you supposed to tell them to do? Both of their coping mechanism are to take everything that has happened to them and push it down as deep as possible. And that's why Neil's always like, I'm fine. And that's why Andrew just always looks like he literally could not care less about anything in the entire world. Like he literally doesn't care about anything. And it's like, you want them to not do that because it's not normal, that's not healthy. But like, I honestly think it's more healthy than actually facing it. Like there's no healthy way for them to face it. They're doing it because they know if they face it, they will literally just lose it completely and not be able to function. Facing it head on, the reality of what's happened to them, especially Andrew, especially because a lot of what has happened to him was just recently, like it makes me so angry. Okay, I think I'm ready to talk about Andrew's abuse. This is the thing that made me cry more than anything, is less about the story and more about it as a reflection of what really happens in the real world. I love me some Neil, but at least I think there aren't that many teenagers or young college students running for their lives from their murderous dads who are in the mafia. It might be there are more than I think, but I don't think there are. So as much as I love Neil, and I know there are people from abusive homes and stuff like that, but like Neil's problems don't make me cry as much as Andrew's do, because I think when you find out what happened to him with like Drake and everything, like I think it's supposed to be some revelation, and it's shocking. It's definitely shocking, and I was horrified, but it wasn't like shocking as a storyline, because the first thing I thought when they said like, oh, he was in a lot of foster homes, I was like, oh, like he must have been sexually abused. And it's so heartbreaking that that's what the first thing I think. Like it's such a well-known, widespread problem that kids who are put into foster care get sexually abused. That's like, it's so well known that that's the first thing my mind thought of. I was actually just trying to think like, why do I know that? Like where did it come from? And it's possible I heard it from a bunch of different places, but I think there's a specific Jodi Picoult book. I don't know, I don't want to like ruin it for you guys because it is kind of like the twist at the end, the sexual abuse, but if you know which one I'm talking about, you know which one I'm talking about. It makes me so angry. Like I think sexual abuse to anyone, against anyone, is horrifying and wrong and should never ever happen, but it makes my blood boil to think that there are evil people in the world who will do this to children in foster care. That means they don't have anyone else in the world, and they're gonna go and hurt those children because they know they have no way to fight back. It makes me so angry. My heart was like breaking just thinking about like Andrew. I don't recommend, by the way, I mean, you could do whatever you want, but if you're gonna read the asks on Nora's Tumblr, the two that like destroyed me, because I was kind of like skipping through a bunch of them, so I haven't read all of them, but I've read like 25% maybe, I don't know. There was one that says, what did Proust do to Andrew? And I have no words. Such cruelty, like, and like the fact that a grown man could be bought out. Drake did the same thing, which Drake was a horrible person to begin with, but the fact that he like takes someone's money, and Proust too would take someone's money, that's enough to hurt a person in such a way and make him relive the worst moments ever. Like I'm so angry, and like that's why when I hear people like it's still like, it's not wrong to like be like laughing at how short the twins are, because it was like I was kind of surprised when I heard it, because I didn't realize it in the beginning, and someone mentioned it to me and I was like, what? That's hilarious, because like everyone's terrified of Andrew and he's 5 feet tall. But now like having read the whole book, all I can think about is he's 5 feet tall, like how he doesn't just have that much power in him because he's small, like how he must have used it against him to like overtake him in Nikki's parents' house. And Luther, like I'm so angry about that, like that Andrew who went through 13 foster homes, of which he said none were good, and according to just the asks that I've seen, at least 4 of them he was sexually abused in, but he probably was in more. I haven't seen any concrete like names or anything for that. He was able to open himself up enough to tell his uncle what was happening, and his uncle said it's a misunderstanding. He wouldn't even believe him. Like I have no words for how angry that makes me, because so wrong. It's so wrong. It makes me so sad because there are kids all around the world going through that. I mean, there are kids not in foster care who have been sexually abused. Like it happens a lot everywhere, and it's all of it's wrong. But it just makes me want to like adopt every single kid who needs a foster home and like keep them close and like hug them and give them all the love in the world. Like it makes me so sad. Like I can't stop thinking about it, because as much as like Andrew's story isn't a real story, that part of it is extremely realistic. So then when I think like about their relationship, like I think Neil, like he puts up with a lot of Andrew's shit. Part of me is like, wow, it's amazing that he does that, but on the other hand, like once you know what Andrew's gone through, like how can you not? I think it's kind of messed up, their relationship, in that like Neil's okay with being like having his hands held down while Andrew kisses him, and I think that's really weird, but like on the other hand, he likes him and he's willing to do that because he knows that it's traumatizing to have someone else's hands, like for Andrew to have someone's hands on him. Like Neil's a great guy, I don't know what to say. And I mean, Neil's got a lot of problems too. like, and Andrew's putting up with them all the time too, so it's not one way. Speaking of consent though, like I know I like that Andrew always asks for consent. It does break my heart every single time he has to ask. He's so scarred. Like, I mean, you should always ask for consent, but he's so scarred that tells him, tell me no, because he's so scared, number one, to open himself up to someone, and number two, to even think that he might be like forcing himself upon another person, even if it's not the case. He's just so scared of that. But I thought it was in the first kissing scene. It's not. It's in a different one. Neil says, like, when you say you don't like being touched, it's because you don't like it at all, because you don't trust anyone else enough to let them touch you. And Andrew goes, it doesn't matter. If it did, I wouldn't ask. It wouldn't matter to a man who doesn't swing. Neil explains how growing up, his mom, whatever, he wasn't allowed to like swing because he had to just worry about being alive. But then, this is an internal thought, he goes, maybe that was why this was in the gray area of what was acceptable. It didn't matter that Andrew was a would-be sociopath or a man. The idea of Andrew was so intertwined with the idea of Neil's safety that this too was a means of self-preservation. So when he says yes, it almost seems like he's not saying yes because he likes Andrew. It's like he's saying yes because his mind has like equated staying safe with whatever Andrew wants. So if Andrew wants him, like to kiss him or whatever, then he's gonna do it because it's a means of keeping himself safe. Which just seems like I'm not gonna blame Andrew for going through with it if he said yes, but like that seems so messed up to me in my mind, and I don't think that's like a consistent thing. Like, I feel like maybe that's his initial thoughts, and as it goes on, like, he really does like Andrew after I don't know exactly what point, but like I just feel like that initial yes to me doesn't feel genuine because of those thoughts. Right after that, he goes, I could never trust anyone in, let anyone in because I didn't trust them, but I trust you. Being in a relationship with someone, or even just doing anything sexual with them, isn't about just trust. It's not like, if I trust someone, I will sleep with them. Because you wouldn't, you know, like, you have to also like want to do it, and I just feel like he's not really into it in the beginning, and it just like weirds me out. So I don't know what to think about that. But then the next paragraph, like, it seems like he's into it. I don't know. He's basically like, I don't understand it, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't want to ignore it just because it's new. Are you completely off limits, or are there any safe zones? What were you hoping for, coordinates? I was hoping to know where the lines are before I cross them, and I'm open to drawing a map on you if you want to loan me a marker. It's not a bad idea. Everything about you is a bad idea. I'm still waiting for an answer. I'm still waiting for a yes or no I actually believe. And he goes, yes. So that's Neil making up his mind, but just like, it's a page before where he like almost basically says like, I'll be with Andrew because safety. I'm like, as I'm like trying to find that part, I just found the part where Andrew gets back from therapy and gets really mad at Neil for being all injured, and I'm like so mad when he says like, why'd you do it? And he's like, well, Rico said if I didn't go, Dr. Proust would, and then he covers his mouth, and like my heart sank so much when that happened. Like, I can't talk about it. Anyway, I've been talking about these two guys for like an hour. To wrap up my main thoughts about the two of them, I'm just so happy they have each other. And if you read what happens after, like, it says that they like learn to open up to each other and learn to trust each other more and more after this year. They both become professionals, and then I think Andrew, because Andrew starts applying himself, which I freaking love. Andrew gets offered a spot on the court team first, and he says no, and Kevin's already on it. Yes, then Kevin goes court, Andrew gets offered court, turns it down, then Neil gets offered court, and because Andrew didn't want to be on court, I think, without Neil, but then when Neil got the spot, they like worked it out for Andrew to get another offer. And it doesn't say if they all won Olympic medals at any point, but I'm hoping they did because I'm like an Olympic freak. And I mean, also like the end of the book, he says like he can see the future in front of him. That ending kills me. Like, I wanted to cry, but it was like so incredible that like I was so happy, because it ends with like one paragraph of him. A year ago, he'd been a scared nobody, hating himself for signing the Foxes contract, counting down the days until he moved in with one match. Today he was starting striker, the first ranked team in NCAA. In 2 years he'd be captain, and 4 he'd graduate from Palmetto State. He'd find a professional team first and fight tooth and nail to make the cut for court. Neil could already imagine the weight of the Olympics medal around his neck. He didn't even care what color it was as long as it was his. And the next paragraph is like, better than that bright future is what he already had, a court that would always be home, a family who'd never give up on him, and Andrew, who for once hadn't wasted their time denying that this thing between them might actually mean something to both of them. Neil hadn't even noticed the silence at first, too distracted by his dizzying thoughts. Now he couldn't help but smile. Neil smiling, like, that's enough to make me cry, and pull Andrew in. This was everything he wanted, everything he needed, and Neil was never letting go. And I'm just like, ah! It's a great ending. I absolutely love it. So that's all my thoughts. Very angry about the abuse that they suffered. A little on the fence about Andrew as a person, but like mostly extremely supportive and loving. And very, very in love with, not in love with, but I love Neil a lot. Something really important to me is I'm trying really hard not to fetishize Andrew and Neil's relationship, because like I know like when there's like a couple that you really like in a book, and I do really like them, it's easy to be like, oh, I love my cute small gay sons, or whatever people like to say on the internet, but I'm trying not to, because I feel like a whole foundation of the relationship is this mutual understanding of each other, because they both suffered so much, and it just feels so wrong to just sum it up as like cute gay guys in a relationship, they're just like young men who have gone through unimaginable horrors, and they're just like, they have absolutely no healthy relationships in their lives to base it on, and they're just struggling to make it and like do it in any way they can, and it just feels wrong to like trivialize it. So I mean, like, you can love them and say whatever you want, but I just feel like I'm trying to keep it in like a very like normal perspective. Does that make sense? I don't know. Coach Womack, I freaking love him. He's the best. Bless his soul. He's doing God's work. Just like quickly gonna go through the rest of them. I love Renee, but it's weird how like Neil hating her made me not like her until I was like, wait, why don't I like her? That's so stupid. Kevin, he's just an asshole. I've been seeing people, like he also had a terrible childhood, and like him and Andrew, like, and Aaron, sorry. They're both like hard to like, but I really recommend the post on, there was a post about like, why do you like Aaron so much? And Nora like responded about like how he's just like willing to put all the work in to get whatever it is he wants, and he like, I think he becomes a doctor if I'm not wrong. Like, I don't know. So like, I like them like in a like distant, far off, like, yes, I like them way, but it's also like, it's hard to like them too. Freaking love Dan and Matt. God bless them. Oh my gosh. Dan and Matt are the best, and I love them. Seth, they're like, I was slowly going through the countdown to the Kingsmen thing on her blog, where she like goes into like the backgrounds of each character, and I freaking love the one on Seth because it let you understand him in a way that you never did in the books. Yeah, hard to like Seth, but obviously very, very sad that he died. Like, that's, let's just take away from that. Allison's got more to her than you realize, and she's pretty cool too. Nikki. It's funny because I remember in the beginning of the book thinking they're gonna make me try to like Nikki because he's like the nice jokey one, but I just like, it took me a really long time to come around on him, specifically because of that first time that they went out where he like forced himself on Neil. I thought he had such a big hand in Andrew's taking them out. I still don't really forgive him for that, but I do really like Nikki. I like that he has Eric and he's like trying, and he like, oh, like I feel so bad for both him and Neil, like when they like realized that they had like convinced Andrew to come to his house, not knowing obviously what was gonna happen. Yeah, so Nikki I do really like. It mentions that the next year when they bring in 6 new people, apparently like their team had finally like come together all the way at the end, like right by the death matches, and it says that basically like it was hard to bring the new people in because like they were like a team, and these new people didn't know their team, and also like remember he only like hires people who have like really sad and broken backgrounds, so like any of these people are gonna be hard to fit into the team, but apparently Neil had a problem with 2 of them, and I'm like, tell me more. I loved Abby. It's a shame that like Betsy, we never got to see Neil like open up to her a little bit. Like, I know his I only open up to Andrew thing is what's going on with him, but like Betsy seemed like a nice person. I'll give her that. Andrew seemed to be okay with it. I would give anything to get a scene of one of her therapy sessions with the twins. I'm just saying. Because they love each other. Like, did you guys just sit there reading the books and be like, just love each other? Like, that's just what I want. Like, they have this stupid promise that forces them to just make each other have lonely lives. Oh, why don't you promise me that you'll never be friends with anyone else except me? Oh, but also we don't talk, so you can just have no friends. Okay? That scene, well, when they come in and they see Drake, and like, the first thing Aaron does is just grab the racket and like murder Drake. But like, I don't even care about that. Like, good riddance, goodbye, I don't care, bye. It's a shame that push came to shove. I didn't want that to happen at all, but you can see that like deep inside, their first instincts are to protect each other. And like, I can't even think about like how the whole crazy story of like, they didn't know the other one existed, and then like Andrew shut him out, and like there were reasons. Like, Andrew shut him out first for anger, and then he shut him out because he realized like Drake was trying to get to Aaron, and like all of that, and then like Aaron hated Andrew because he killed his mom, and like all that's so crazy. But like at the end of the day, I'm just like, you clearly like want to protect each other and love each other. I want that to happen, so I just like, I kind of want more of seeing their relationship mend. Let's talk about other people, the Moriyamas. I mean, obviously everything surrounding the Butcher and the Moriyamas were not going to be like super realistic. I was kind of sitting there the whole time being like, okay, I know how this is gonna end. Like, the series is not gonna just end with them like losing forever. Like, they're clearly gonna win the championship, and they're clearly gonna somehow get Neil to like a safe spot. But like, you can't take down one of the biggest mafia crime empires in the world. They're not gonna just take down the Moriyamas. So that was like the intrigue of like, how is this gonna be resolved? It was interesting. Kengo died, so then there was like the new order, and like somehow Neil, I mean, Neil wasn't the only one who did it, because he like, they knew what was going on with Rico, but he kind of like tried to be like, yeah, Rico's ruining your whole empire, and but then they killed Rico, and like, I freaking hate Rico, but I did spend a second or two thinking of like, I wonder what he would have been like if he grew up in a different family. He was so messed up and was so evil and horrible, and I hate him, but there is that portion of like, he spent his whole life doing this to impress his dad, who got rid of him the minute he was born, and his brother, who doesn't acknowledge him and then murdered him at the end. So there is like, that's like a sadness of lost potential, but I'm not sad that Rico's dead at all. I don't want to talk about what happened to Evermore, but maybe I should. This, I guess, is where I'm going to bring in Jean. Yeah, Yeah, don't read the ask where it says, what did Rico do to Jean? Unless you want your soul to depart and to just like wither down into a puddle of tears, because my heart breaks for Jean Moreau. I don't have words. Like, such cruelty is like unimaginable. I don't understand. I wish we had a little bit more insight into him when Renee saved him from Evermore. There was a moment where I'm like, oh, he's gonna join the Foxes, but I think obviously the resolution that we have is way better where he joins USC. The idea that his own family sold him out to the Moriyamas, like, that just goes against every idea of family that I have. So I have a lot of very negative views on the Moriyamas and the Butcher. I mean, what can I say about his time, Neil's time at Evermore, and with Lola and Ramiro and the Butcher? Like, I mean, all of those times he's being tortured, and it's insane and it's horrible and it's horrifying to watch. I think, I mean, the one with his dad is way worse because we see all of it, and my heart just broke because Neil is always a fighter. Like, no matter what happens, like, someone like licks me too hard, girl, I'm on the floor crying, and he's like, no matter what, he comes up fighting, like, fist up. And that like last second when he thinks he's finally gonna get like literally his legs cut off, and he finally breaks down and says like, please, destroyed me. I was like, no, no. And I was like horrified. I didn't know what was gonna happen. Like, I didn't think he was gonna die because like, I didn't really think like it was gonna happen, but like, I don't know, maybe he's gonna be horribly maimed for the rest of his life. Like, I don't know. So yeah, and then Stuart came in and killed his dad. So like, that was horrible, but the time at Evermore is just as bad. It's just you don't get as much detail about it. My heart just like wept for him when he came back and he called Coach, and Coach was like, are you okay? And he said, no, come get me. Like, he couldn't see, couldn't move. What's also so sad to me is that you understand how much his past has already broken him before that point, because even after having his face cut off and his body like bruised and hit and cut and everything, even after all of that, the thing that brings him to a breaking point is seeing his own natural hair and eyes and the tattoo. Those things make him more upset than anything else. Seeing his dad in his own face and seeing the sign that Rico is closing the doors on like him and his choices, that is the worst. So that, I don't want to say more about those times because I mean they're explainably like terrible, and it's more like the recovery also. Like, every time it hurts him to like sit and move, it's horrible. The only redeeming factor is, I mean, there are some nice moments where like you see his teammates' concern for him, so that's like somewhat nice, but I mean, it doesn't like take away from how horrible the situation is. Coach being Kevin's dad, that was an interesting twist, and I like that moment where Coach was giving them like tickets to their last game against the Ravens, and he said, you sure you don't want any tickets? And he's like, my dad comes to all my games. And I was like, oh. I know Andrew's really, you know, messed up, and Coach is not a very warm person. He has the heart of an angel and he is incredible and I love him, but he's not like a warm, fuzzy kind of person. But I hope they end up having somewhat of a relationship, even if it's not like a typical father-son relationship. I know I'm gonna come up with more things later and be mad that my 6-hour review doesn't include them, but I think these are like my important thoughts. There are some like cute parts. I spent the whole time talking about the terrible things, but the cutest stuff was just like the team being a team and getting along well. I like Neil's growth, and I like the times where he realizes that the team cares for him. Dan's like, oh, you can take the girls' shower first, and he's like, what? And they're like, yeah, you know. And he like realized that they were paying attention. They know that he wouldn't be comfortable changing with everyone else, and like it just like warmed his heart. Or like when Nikki just like offhandedly referred to him as his friend, and he's like, are we friends? And Nikki's like whole face broke, like, oh, like he still can't accept that we're friends even though we're clearly friends, because it's like he just doesn't even know that. And it's like, so it's a sad moment, but it's also like, it's nice, you know, like, oh, he does have friends. Nikki's like doesn't have to think about it, of course we're friends. I like how Neil goes from like, who are these people, I don't care, let me play Exy, to like, oh, that's nice that they're doing something nice for me, I don't really know how to accept that, to like all the way at the end where he's like, they're my family, they're my people, and I love them, and they're the best. And I'm like, ugh. I love that. I like that thing that Coach says all the way at the beginning where he says it's about second chances or third or fourth, as long as it's one more than others were willing to give you. Neil is kind of like, yeah, everyone says he's just a crackpot, like but like listening to him say that, he's just like, he like believed that Coach really meant it, and I love that. I love Abby. I wish Coach and Abby the best, even though she says that like they move in together but they never get married, but like whatever, as long as they have each other, I don't really care. I have seen people fan shipping, even though I know Kevin's straight and whatever, he has, what's her name, Thea or whatever her name is, I ship him with Jeremy. Like, I endorse that ship a lot. It's hilarious because he's so like tightly wound, and like Jeremy's so like chill and like nice. Like, they would just be perfect balance, but also be a little bit weird because like Kevin's obsessed with him. Yeah, let's talk about the Trojans. They are incredible and I love them. That's probably one of the most unrealistic things about the entire book, is that they like gave them their game in the second to last no, it wasn't the second to last because they still have to play the Ravens after that. But they basically let themselves lose to like the worst team in the NCAA because they wanted to see if they could be good enough to play the way they did with only 9 players. But it was just such a good, like, it was so nice that they did that. It was cool that they like wanted to see if they could learn to play like that. And it also made you really love like the Foxes even more when you saw that like the USC team, like they were all like dying by the end of the game because they'd never played a game like that before. They were like, they barely played like full halves, let alone a full game. Whereas it's nothing to like people like Kevin and Neil who just don't have a third striker. I mean, even like the people who, everyone else was like, it was hard for all of them, like even Matt and Nikki and Aaron, who technically they have a sub for backliner. It's crazy how much I know about this game. Like I can like off the top of my head, like I can do this game. I want to play this game. I don't even work out. I've never played a full contact sport in my life. I am on the first XC team I can find. I mean, like watch me drop out after a day, but I would totally sign up for that. I have a lot of thoughts on this book. I think talking about it helped, so I'm glad I did this. And now I'm gonna go back into the asks and cry again. Okay, so I'm like 99% sure that like nobody's gonna watch this, but in case the rabid fan base, I know it's like pretty small, the Foxhole Court or whatever off the game fan base, but if you guys are interested in hearing my thoughts on, I can't remember what it's called right now, but it's like some weird word where it's like the freshman year of the cousins, like the first year that they joined the team as told through Renee's perspective. There's like a bunch of chapters. I've just seen that it exists and I was like, I don't have time for this yet, but I might have a lot of thoughts on that, and maybe I might even have thoughts on the asks I have not read yet. The only asks I would ask, like if I was asking Nora something, is I personally am interested in knowing, I don't know, maybe this is an ask, but let me pull this up on my phone. I'm sorry, my like internet in my house is down. I'm looking for if anyone asks if Neil ever gets plastic surgery. It's kind of rude that Matt's dad says it to him at the game, but I just like, I don't think, you know, I don't think it's like you have to get plastic surgery to look normal if you don't like how you look or whatever, but I mean his dad burnt his face off. Like I don't want his face to look, you know, burnt for the rest of his life. I'm just interested in knowing if he ever does anything to fix that. I just feel like he shouldn't have to see that violence on his face every time he looks in a mirror, and gets bad enough that he sees his dad and his eyes and hair and everything. I also would kind of like to know if Jean gets his tattoo removed. I would assume he does. Like not even do what Kevin did, just like remove it. Also, it says that in the post, the end of the book, blog post, it says that like Jean doesn't make court. And I thought that was like part of the Moriyama's deal. So I'm like, is he okay? Is he gonna be okay? I'd love also a cute Nikki Eric scene. That would be cute. That's all for now, folks. This book destroyed me in every way possible. It made me also realize, just like, not to minimize, like if you have a problem and you're allowed to feel however you want about things that are going on in your life, whether they're big or small, but it made me try to put things in perspective. Yeah, girl, you don't got no problems. Like, you're fine, you know, like it makes me so grateful. My overarching like thought was, I don't understand anything that like they're thinking or the way they act or anything. And I'm like, you know what, maybe it's because you've never been abused. Thank God you have living parents who are loving, and a family and friends, and you're not growing up impoverished. You're not running from anyone who wants to kill you. Things are good. That's why I don't understand these characters, and I never will, hopefully. I want to just sit and think about this book and like cry for the rest of my life. I just want people to like take care of all the Andrews and Neils and Aaron's and Kevin's and Dan's and Renee's of the world, and just like take care of each other. Do what you can to not let bad people get away with stuff. As much as I love the relationships, and as much as I love the story, and as much as I like love XC and everything else, all I care about is like, don't let people be hurt by other people. I hope you enjoyed this ramble. Bye.